welcome to a brand new episode of Off the Print. You're with me, Jamila Husain. Today with me are two very young members from the United National Party who will be keeping us up to date as to what the party is doing. We'll be discussing about the burning issues in the country and what the future holds for them as young members of the UNP. So tonight we have with us is Shehara Herath, who is the chairman of the UNP National Youth Front, and Dinouk, Colombage, who is the media secretary to the United National Party. Shehara, Dinouk, thank you so much for joining me on the program.
Thanks for having us.
So I'm going to ask you all something very blunt. I'm going to start off the show with that. You all are seated as members of the United National Party who suffered a humiliating defeat in the previous general election. Basically, you all are boiled down to nothing with only one nationalist seat in the parliament, which is now occupied by the former Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe, who the people have rejected. How does it feel? Dinouk?
It feels good. Feels good, Jamila.
How does it feel good after being rejected by the public?
It feels good because it's given us an opportunity to rebuild. It's given us the attention is back on us. Definitely 2 years ago when we lost, we wouldn't have thought that. But people are looking to us, and because they're looking for new faces. And it's exciting. You look at all the other parties, they're in absolute disarray. I mean, just today we're hearing about a cabinet reshuffle because members within their own party can't get along, they're fighting. The opposition, the joke is that there are more presidential candidates than there are going to be voters at the next election.
Yes.
Here at the UNP, it's finally given us as young people the opportunity to come forward and really make a mark on Sri Lankan politics.
Okay, so you think you have a future in the UNP?
Definitely.
Shehara, what about you? You are a new face which we are seeing in the political arena. How does it feel to sit with the UNP?
Well, last election, it's true that we got down to one seat. But that was an election where we saw the government being blown out of proportion. And as you can clearly see, although the government has 2/3 majority in parliament, they are not fulfilling people's wishes at all. And given that context, from my learnings is that the United National Party has suffered humiliating defeats in the past. We have gone down to 8 seats. So this is maybe an opportunity just to realize that, maybe there were certain errors on our part, and there were certain errors on the part of the people for, recognizing a government which was blown out of proportion, and, to get it fixed within the next few years.
Dinouk, Shehara, I'm going to ask you this. How is it like working with Ranil Wickremesinghe? Because from what we have heard, he's very unpopular. He's a person who doesn't listen to his members. He doesn't listen to his party members, which is, I think, what dragged the UNP down to begin with. So how is it like? You all are very young. How is it like working with Ranil Wickremesinghe, Dinouk?
Mr. Wickremesinghe is somebody who, he pushes you. He challenges you on everything. I mean, I may have an idea regarding a media campaign or a particular message that we want to take out, and I will go to him and I'll present it. And he would just straight away say, why? What is this going to get? And he gets us to think things through.
Okay.
And I think that, for me, I'm personally somebody who likes to be challenged when I work with someone. I don't like to just work with someone who just say yes to or no to whatever I say. Challenge me,
Okay.
drive me forward. So working with him is a challenge. And I think, like everyone, you have to develop a rapport with that person.
Okay.
But there's absolutely no issues working with him.
Right. Shehara, what's your rapport with the former Prime Minister?
Well, just to correct something you just mentioned that under his leadership, the UNP has, lost its popularity. And for me personally, what I think is that the infighting UNP has had for the past 1.5 decades was one of the main reasons why the UNP is in this situation now.
But that infighting also isn't the former Prime Minister to blame for that infighting, Shehara?
Well, United National Party is a party which had party discipline within it.
Okay.
And there was a time where, where members of the United National Party, they aligned to, the general rules and regulations of a party.
Okay.
And now what we saw after 2000
Okay.
is that people were rallying around different popular figures, people were rallying around different, sub-leaders under the UNP, and thus creating conflict within the party, which has
Right.
led to this.
Right.
And personally working with Honorable Ranil Wickremesinghe, what I think is that he has a lot of ideas,
Okay.
but in the meantime, like, he is not very good at marketing it to the people. Okay, and personally, if you ask me, people ask, Ranil monada karla thiyenne, what has Ranil done? And then I could, give you a list of things Ranil has done since he was the education minister, starting from the National Youth Services Council to the building of the science colleges, building of teacher training colleges, establishing the GC O-level and A-level schemes, etc., etc. But now another thing I would like to point out is, see, look at all the development projects which happened before 2015. Always you had Mahinda Rajapaksha's face on it. Highway was built by Mahinda Rajapaksha. Port was built by Mahinda Rajapaksha. The small canal was built by Mahinda Rajapaksha. The toilet was built by Mahinda Rajapaksha. But if you look at the period after 2015, every person took credit for it. Mr. Wickremesinghe didn't go putting his face on each and every development project.
Shehara, can you list me 3 things what the UNP government did, development projects, after 2015, which was not done by Mr. Wickremesinghe?
Which was not done by Mr.
Yes,
Wickremesinghe.
probably done by the minister in charge. Like you said, Mr. Wickremesinghe did not take credit for all the projects because it was it was equally divided as to who worked and where. What did you all bring in?
So after 2015, I think we saw one of the most developing forms of international relations we have ever seen in a long time. Okay, one thing was getting back the GSP Plus, which, if not for the GSP Plus, I think we would have had these power cuts starting from middle of last year. Okay, that was one major victory which was spearheaded by Mr. Wickremesinghe. And even projects such as the Suez area, which was initiated by Mr. Wickremesinghe, he didn't go behind it to get credit. And you're asking me whether I could list down a project which Mr. Wickremesinghe wasn't involved, which I think is a very difficult question to answer, because it's a cabinet collective decision which goes into a development project. What I showed in the comparison before 2015 and after 2015 is that before 2015 there was no room for emergence of new leaders. It was all MR. But now we see, after 2015, Mr. Wickremesinghe allowing people to take credit for it. And that was, I mean, it's not a failure, but people saw it as a victory.
So you all feel the Rajapaksas are all about the Rajapaksas itself?
Definitely.
And not, the credit is not going to the person who deserves to be credited?
Well, can anyone name a minister in the previous Rajapaksa government or this government who has actually done anything?
Right.
Or is it all Mahinda Rajapaksa? I mean, in fairness to the ministers, it is tough when over 70% of the economy is controlled, or the budget is controlled by the Rajapaksa family.
Dinouk, Shehara, we're just going to go in for a very short break. We will be right back. Welcome back to Off the Print. Tonight with me are two very young members from the United National Party who are discussing with us about the failures of the UNP and how they are going to get back into the political scene. Dinouk, Shehara, just before we went in for a short break, you all were explaining to me how when the Rajapaksas did something, it's always the Rajapaksas who are credited for it. Can I ask you something? The United National Party has been led by Ranil Wickremesinghe for a very, very long period of time. One of the complaints is that he is not stepping down and giving way for another new person to take over. So isn't that like him also holding on to power and ruining the party? So isn't he being selfish there as well?
No, I don't agree at all. 2015 to 2019.
Dinouk, he's been under a lot of pressure, Dinouk, to step down.
No, but look at
and we as the media have been reporting that several times, Dinouk. Why isn't he stepping down? Last year, Dinouk, your senior members told me that he's going to step down by December. December came and went. We don't see him stepping down. Now we are in March. Dinouk, He's being selfish, or is he planning to give the party to somebody else?
He's working on what the party wants. When we lost the election, there was a single national list that we won or we obtained.
Okay.
At that point, there was a lot of discussion who would go into it. We needed someone who could come in, and we finally put it to the party.
Okay.
Overwhelmingly, the party said it has to be Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe. We need this person to lead us to allow the rebuilding of the party.
Okay.
Now, there is absolutely no case of him not giving leadership to anyone else. 2019 presidential election, Mr. Sajid Premadasa was the candidate. He went on and he lost that election. Subsequently, 2020, it was offered to him to lead the United National Party-led alliance at the general election.
Okay.
After which, depending on how that election turned out, the party would then decide on who would then take over the leadership. Mr. Premadasa didn't take up the challenge and he left. Now what's happened is Mr. Wickremesinghe has handed over the party affairs to Mr. Ruwan Wijewardene and Mr. Akila
Who's your
Viraj
deputy leader?
who's my deputy leader
Yeah.
and our assistant leader. They are running the day-to-day affairs. Mr. Wickremesinghe doesn't have anything to do with the United National Party in that sense. He is the leader of it because he's representing us in Parliament, but his focus is on the national issues that are facing us.
Right. Shehara, what lies ahead now for the UNP? You all are two very young members who are now working with the UNP. Hopefully you all will be contesting the next general elections from your respective districts. What are you all going to offer to the public? How are you all going to win them back?
Well, I think what I've seen throughout ages is whenever the number of elephants in the parliament have gone down, the country has faced unprecedented economic hardships.
Okay.
So this time there's only one elephant in parliament, so the country is facing the worst economic crisis there is.
Okay. I wish the public would agree with you there, but that's a strong point.
Okay. In 72 also, there were less number of elephants in parliament. You were facing a huge economic backlash. So if the country wants to get the economy back on track, we need to increase the number of elephants in parliament. And out of, I told this at the very
How can
beginning.
you increase the number of elephants in parliament when the common man, when the voter has no confidence in you all?
Well, that's
Shehara?
what we're taking up the challenge of that,
Okay.
Yeah,
Jamila.
so now
what
the
lies ahead now?
party has a challenge of regaining the voters' trust, because now what I see is now people have lost faith in all political parties, and I think you would agree with me, especially the young
Yes.
people, especially 18, 19, 20-year-olds
Yes.
are
Yes.
fed up, of the UNP, SJB, you name it, everyone, is out of their,
Yes.
choices.
Right.
So now what we need to do as the United National Party is to offer them a fresh agenda, a fresh hope, because we have worked this thing before. In 2015, we took a debt-ridden government and we managed to, rebuild our international relations, rebuild the brand name of Sri Lanka. And in 2018, we were called the best tourist destination in Sri Lanka up until the Easter Sunday bombings were put up. So this over and over again, we have shown that if we were given the job, we will do it. It's just a matter of fact that we, like I said before, we are bad in marketing. So now we need to focus on that. And that's what we will do. And also just to, add to the earlier question you
Yes.
said, you mentioned that Ranil Wickremesinghe has been in power, been the leader of the UNP for so long. Again, there is another issue there of party discipline, because we saw, he is not the longest reigning party leader in Sri Lanka. The longest reigning party leader in Sri Lanka was Sirimau Bandaranaike. She was, in the leader of the SLFP for so long, and no one even, challenged her. Okay, and now what we see is...
But now, Shehara, we are into more modern times where the youth have a say.
Yeah,
Where
definitely.
the public has a say. I think back then it was a bit different. But now the general consensus what we are receiving now is that they want a new face for the UNP.
And that's what the new faces are. Myself and Shehara
Yes.
here, we're seated here. I
And
think
while I would love to see you all continue your political careers with the UNP, the new face what I'm referring to, Dinouk, is where the leadership is concerned.
And that's where I think the leadership has to also, there has to be an individual, whoever it is, has to come forward and gain the confidence of the people before they get leadership. Leadership is not given, it's earned.
Right.
And I think that's the problem right now, is that up until 2020,
Right.
the UNP had a collection of members who felt that they deserved the leadership.
Right.
None of them earned it. They all
Right.
deserved it. Though.
Right.
And that is what the difference is with this time with the UNP. We went back after that loss, we sat down and we realized, we discussed it, and we recognized that confidence needs to be won back. And the only way we can win that confidence is being proactive.
Right.
That is something that, unfortunately, the former group of the UNP was unable to do.
Right, okay. Dinouk, Shehara mentioned about the Easter Sunday attacks. I think you know what's coming up. It happened under Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe and President Maithripala Sirisena. People lost faith in y'all. That was a severe blow, in fact, to the country. People lost faith in y'all. What next? I mean, how are you all going to convince the people that you all will ensure national security if you all come back into power in the future? That was a huge failure by your part.
It was, and I think we apologized. We took responsibility, something that no government ever had.
Lives were lost.
Lives were lost, and it was an absolute tragedy. And the UNP paid for it in losing the presidential election. I think we have to go back to, and we have to actually look at the situation that led to that Easter Sunday attack.
Right.
We had a president who was more concerned about his own little political agenda than he was about the national security of the country. I mean, he left the country without appointing a minister of an acting minister of defense.
Right.
He had informed his secretary of defense and his IGP and the rest of them not to report to either the prime minister or the minister or the state minister of defense. In fact, on the day of the attack, when Mr. Wickremesinghe called the National Security Council, they refused to attend that meeting. He, in fact, had to get in the car and go to the Army Ministry of Defense and meet them there because they were under instructions by this president. So I think we have seen there's been several presidential commission reports. There's been even Mr. Shani Abhisegara. The finger is pointed at an individual, and I think that's up to the authorities.
Right.
What we have to do, though, is we have to look at there was a serious lapse in security. That has to be dealt with.
Right, okay.
And we need to get to the core of that problem. Otherwise, it's going to be there for anyone.
Dinouk, Shehara, we're just going to go in for a very short break. We will be right back. Welcome back to Off the Print. Dinouk, Shehara, one very burning question which I've been wanting to ask since the start of the show is that we are right now in a huge mess. We are facing a massive economic crisis, and of course when you go on the roads all you see is queues. We are under the leadership of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa and Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa. Tell me very honestly, I'm not asking you this as a politician, I'm asking you this as a citizen of this country. Who do you think is the best person who can now lead this country and get us out of this situation? Dinouk, please.
Personal opinion, straight away, it's Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe. I've seen him do it before.
Dinouk, don't come and tell me here as a UNP member.
But I will give this message to the public. Make a decision based on what that individual is offering. Don't make it based on their name or what they have, whether they're popular or not. Put popularity aside. Look at whether the individual voter is confident that they can deliver. Like I said, my personal feel is Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe.
Shehara, what about you? Who do you think can get us out of this mess? Once again, I reiterate here, as a common citizen, please answer.
Exactly. So I'm just going to take off my UNP hat and answer that.
Yes.
Okay. So this is not the UNP stance. Personally, as a citizen, as a concerned citizen of this mess we are in, I think the opposition as a whole needs to rise up and unite and, work out a plan to, replace the current government, because the current government has been a failure for the past 2 years and it will prove to be a failure for the next 3 years. There is no doubt about it.
But who do you think can lead?
I'm not going to answer you that in that way as a citizen. But one thing I can tell you...
Are you scared that you might get into trouble if you name somebody else other than your leader?
No.
UNP doesn't.
We're
not like the government to sack people.
Okay.
I'm
just telling you, there should be
that's a good one.
there should be a broad opposition alliance, and it would be very reasonable. And I think every citizen at this point would think it's very reasonable that Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe will play a crucial role in that government.
Right.
That is all I can answer at this moment.
Right. Dinouk, obviously you boys are young. You all are looking at some political path. I'm hoping and I'm guessing that you are going to be contesting the next general election. Whatever district electorate which you represent, what are you going to be able to give your voter? Why should they vote for you?
I think when you look at the current crop of politicians, there's no vision, there's no direction. It is just firefighting. I think we had this chat earlier also, and I said, since 77, the J.R. Jayawardena government came in with a vision for the country, it put it on that path, and then since then it stagnated. We've just been firefighting, day in, day out. Politicians, because the politicians are not capable of doing it. I'm going to be brutally honest. So, but I mean, I'm an educated person. Okay, I'm not boasting, but I'm confident in my abilities, and where I know where there'll be shortcomings, I'm confident that I'll be able to engage the right people to help me. So the biggest thing I think is to regain the confidence of the public in politicians. That's gone. There's no confidence, there's no respect.
I agree with you, because right now all 225 seem to have lost public confidence.
And so I want to regain the respect also. It has to be a respectable service. I won't use the word profession, because right now everybody looks at politics as a money-making venture. It's a service. So as a young politician, one of the big things is I hope I can encourage other younger people to come forward.
Right. Shehara, what's your take? What can you offer your voter? Why should they vote for you?
That's a very tough question, I would say, because coming into politics wasn't an easy decision.
Right.
I mean, given the context today, it's not the easy, way which politics were a few decades ago.
Right.
So personally, what I would, what I would offer from my end is that I would really advocate that Sri Lanka should have a strong policy framework which doesn't change over time. And that is what the UNP is advocating for at this moment. Because every 5 years we change our policies, there is no consistency, and the country just falls on its pieces. So personally, as a person who wouldn't change policies, even when the party has gone down to one seat, we wouldn't, switch parties. I would stick by the party, that's one thing.
I really hope that you all stand by your words in a few years' time when you all are seated in your seats.
Definitely.
Because hopping is a part of Sri Lankan politics for a very long time. So I'm going to hold you both to that in a few years.
Yeah, that's an assurance. And one thing I would say is that we need more young people in politics. That's a plea I would like to make, because when I speak to young people, I feel depressed. Because they feel that them getting into politics is not going to change anything. They should either go abroad or mind their own business. But that's really saddening. It's not what we see in democratic countries. In democratic countries, young people love politics. They love to come and maybe advocate for what they believe in. Maybe animal rights, maybe human rights, maybe something to do with the environment, or policy making, economics, whatever. But it's quite saddening that in Sri Lanka, young people are always kept out of the table.
Shehara, Dinouk, I would love to continue our conversation, because it's not very often on my program do I get two very young aspiring politicians who I get to grill, especially from a party which people want to know what's happening. Thank you for joining me on the program, and I wish you all personally all the best in your political career.
Thanks, Jamila.
Thank you so much.
Well, that's all we have for you tonight on Off the Print. Please join me again next week with a brand new episode at 9:30. Till then, goodbye and good night.